There has been nothing less than an earthquake in federal acquisition and procurement over the last 13 months. There have been at least 59 recent executive actions focused on the federal government acquisition system since the start of the second Trump administration. Three of the most prominent of these efforts are the revolutionary FAR overhaul, the consolidation of procurement responsibility in the General Services Administration, or GSA, and efforts to promote cross-government use of cost-effective commercial solutions. These changes focus on speed, reducing barriers, and limiting duplication. I recently spoke with Mr. Jeffrey Koses, the Senior Procurement Executive at GSA, to learn more about this work and the role the GSA is taking in rising to the challenges in carrying out these directives. Streamlining government procurement is not an easy task, but there is a true sense of urgency in the current moment. I'm your host, Jerry McGinn, and welcome to another episode of All About the Base. In this first clip, Jeffrey Koses explains the two phases of changes to the Federal Acquisition Regulation, or FAR. Let's take a look.
Two that I'd like to highlight. First is the one that directed the rewrite of the rulebook for federal buying. It's called the Federal Acquisition Regulation. There's about $750 billion a year in spend that goes under those rules. It's all of the federal government, including Department of War, all the civilian agencies, with just a couple of very odd and minor carve-outs. So we have an executive order, and it told us a couple of really intriguing things. It told us that the rules had become bloated, that it had reached over 2,000 pages. It told us that we were moving too slowly. It told us that we were not expanding the industrial base. If anything, we were chasing industry away. So executive order told us, hey guys, fix it. Fix it now. They gave us 6 months for the first phase of this. The first phase was to rewrite all of the rules through a deviation. So it's not yet going through formal rulemaking at that phase. It was a rewrite of the rules. We have reached the end of that phase, and in this, actually in 5.5 months, so we even beat the deadline, we rewrote the entire playbook. We cut the Federal Acquisition Regulation by a full quarter, got rid of 230,000 words, 484 pages, 2,724 mandates, must-do statements. Took a number of steps to better empower the contracting workforce and to better empower industry, trying to drive to good solutions. On that initiative, we're now turning to phase two. Phase two is the actual rulemaking process. In April, if we remain on track, you'll start seeing the first set of rules. Ultimately, there are going to be 12. They'll go out for notice and comment and will lead to a full rewrite of the FAR to be codified to be our path forward.
As you just heard, GSA has rewritten the FAR to cut it by 25% as part of phase one of the revolutionary FAR overhaul. GSA is now pursuing phase two, the formal rulemaking process for these changes. That will be industry and the public's opportunity and your opportunity to make comments on these proposed rules. So be on the lookout for the publication of these proposed rule changes and your opportunity to make comments. Next, we spoke with Jeff about the consolidation of some federal procurement activities in GSA and how changes have been implemented to shift contracting away from other agencies.
Hand in hand with that, the other key executive order that I think is worth talking about today was one that sought to consolidate procurement for common goods and services within GSA. That executive order made a couple of really central points. it said, hey, Congress, you set GSA up to go be the common buyer across government. GSA, get back to that mission. If you do that, you can reduce a lot of wasteful spending, a lot of duplication. You can harness the federal government's buying power. But this was a message to the rest of the federal agencies. It was telling all these other agencies out there, focus on your mission, focus on the contracts that are essential to how you do business every day, not to the common use contracts. So in that executive order, GSA was directed to put in place an implementation plan. We have worked across federal government, gathered information from, again, Department of War and every one of the civilian agencies, and have been working with OMB on the specifics of how do we implement? How can we generate savings? We think it will easily top $1 billion a year in savings through this effort. And taking it further, how does that let agencies focus on what they most need? Right now, this is an executive order that's really trying to drive efficiency. GSA's had over 3 decades to try and really understand the importance of customer service, of an entrepreneurial approach to government. So we've been trying to build that. And as these conversations are happening, we're recognizing the importance of things such as signed agreements with the customer agencies, where they are willing customers because they are seeing value. Finally, we have Office of Federal Procurement Policy, part of OMB, taking a really active hand in saying both to GSA, hey, you have to go drive these savings and this value and support for the agencies, and telling the agencies, you can't be wasting money creating duplicative contracts. So OMB is trying to set itself up as the umpire and trying to force both GSA and the agencies to understand the rules of the game and the arena and how to drive this. Within that, there's 2 big work streams we're really thinking about. One is the idea of we need to reduce the number of contracts across government. Anyone in the IDIQ space is aware of the challenge of duplicative contracts. I think we can point to many examples of multiple agencies awarding the IDIQ where the scope is the same, where we've got the same set of vendors. To me, that's a good example of waste. We don't need agency after agency to set up the same shell. We need one agency to set that up, to manage it, and to ensure it works for others. You just saw NIH announce in a court filing that they are going to pull the plug on the CIOSP4. You've also seen NASA announce pretty clearly that they are proceeding with award on SOUP 6. We need competition. We need a variety of solutions for buying IT product services. We don't need every agency to have a duplicative vehicle for that. So that's the first half of this whole consolidation. It's just a build contracts that other agencies can use to fulfill their needs. Second part is where agencies don't have the resources and capability to buy what they have. You talked about the Doge days. Across government, there have been big cuts in the acquisition workforce. There are agencies that need assistance. For years, GSA has had a phenomenal offering called Assisted Acquisition Services, where we've been handling high-end complex professional services in IT. We provide contracting officers, core support, other expertise to help an agency navigate that, often helping them move from a long-term sole source to competitive situation. A new offering that we've created out of this consolidation is for the common use, faster types of products or services, things that don't require program managers, that don't require a lot of complexity, things COs can do on their own. We're calling this our Office of Commercial Acquisition Solutions, or OCAS, very much geared towards the simple, repetitive, move fast type of solutions. That's entirely voluntary on agencies. No agency is required to sign up to use that. And if we're back to a slow-moving agency, nobody's going to use it. We need to be agile, to be offering good solutions, to have our customer base out there.
These clips make clear that the federal government is rewriting the playbook to procurement, while also moving procurement responsibility for non-mission related functions to a centralized source. The third key change underway addresses where to focus government buying efforts, namely directing agencies across the government to use cost-effective commercial solutions wherever possible. Jeffrey Koses explains these efforts to unify government purchasing, specifically for commercial IT solutions.
As I said earlier, there have been many executive orders. One of them was actually issued the same day as the one that directed us to rewrite the rulebook, told us we need to be buying the commercial products and services, not the government unique item. Typically, when there's an executive order, there'll also be a White House fact sheet that provides a little more context, a little more information about what drove it and what is the key message. The fact sheet, I need to double check my number, but I think it said that over 10 years, government had overpaid by about $150 billion in IT by not buying the commercial solutions. So I think that is a really powerful statement of what drove the need for the executive order. Through this process, we've gotten a lot of industry feedback on many things. When it comes to that, I think the smartest point that I've been hearing is it's not enough to be buying the commercial item. You have to be looking at what are the commercial buying practices, and are you following those buying practices? Sometimes, frankly, we can't. Sometimes we have statutory bars from doing that. But many times, we can get much closer to those practices than where we historically have been. And that's indeed part of what we have been thinking about. OneGov specifically, the name kind of says it. It's how do we buy as one united government? How are we bringing together our buying power? If we're going to have every agency go off and set its own contract for the same thing, we're not going to ever drive the best deal, because we are diffusing our buying power, we are adding cost to our industry partner. That's a whole lot more terms, conditions, tracking, other things to be done. So over the last few years, we've made a couple of runs at this basic concept. How do we look at terms, at conditions, at pain points, and move closer to buying with the whole buying power of a unified government? That's what the OneGov deal is trying to do. It's trying to say, hey, we are not just bringing you GSA, but you're not going to see a separate contract from the Department of War, and then a separate contract from Interior, and a separate contract from HHS. Everybody will be buying off of the same vehicle. That's the philosophy behind OneGov and where we're trying to go with it.
This is quite an ambitious agenda, and the government appears to be making substantial progress in meeting their objectives. I then asked Jeff about the contracting workforce, which was significantly impacted by retirements and cuts under the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, efforts last year.
Our acquisition workforce is 30% smaller than it was in January of last year. We certainly, we lost some people at the top end who had a lot of experience. We lost a lot of the entry level. And in some ways, that's my bigger concern, because that leaves us with the challenge of rebuilding and building a bench to propel us forward. When we look at the workforce, there's a couple of key things that we're most focused on. First is trying to reach them where they are through many different channels, outreach efforts. The Department of War has an educational entity. Many of you probably know it as Defense Acquisition University, now known as Warfighters Acquisition University. And a much smaller civilian counterpart to that is the Federal Acquisition Institute, which reports into my office. So the two organizations are working together trying to really rethink how do we move forward with training our workforce. Now here, in some ways, the challenge isn't even training, it's untraining. How do you unlearn something that you may have done one way for 10, 20, 30 years? That's the workforce challenge as I'm thinking about it. It's a big, it's culture change, it's empowerment, it's move away from templates, it's really try and emphasize business judgment. I mentioned the reduction of those 2,700 must-do statements, those 2,700 mandates. A lot of them are things very much trying to give discretion to the contracting officer. For instance, in the codified FAR, in an acquisition, we said, hey, in the competitive range, include everybody who has the highest ratings. That's simple to understand. There's no judgment. You say, what are the top ratings? You're in, you're in, you're in. Simple. In the codified FAR, we said, really think about this. Who is best suited for further negotiation? So it's trying to say, hey, you could have the highest rating, but it's clear you're not going to be the ultimate winner. It's not worth the company's time. It's not worth the government's time to continue those conversations. So trying to give the workforce the authority, but then give them the comfort, the training, the resources, the tools, the backing to do those things. That's some of the culture challenge. And to my mind, helping our workforce unlearn, helping our workforce feel empowered, and rebuilding our bench, that's, to me, the workforce challenges right now.
As you can see, there has been a great deal of progress on procurement reform since January of 2025. These reforms impact all federal government agencies and the companies that do business with them. It is incumbent on all parts of the industrial base to keep track of these reforms and to make comments wherever appropriate. Check out my full conversation with Jeff Koses on our SIB events page for more details. And remember, it's all about the base.